Apple has officially failed at artificial intelligence. Again. After spending 2 years trying to develop their own LLMs, large language models, to compete with services like ChatGPT, they appear to have given up. Last month, they released a statement on Google's website saying, quote, Apple and Google have entered into a multi-year collaboration, under which the next generation of Apple Foundation models will be based on Google's Gemini models in cloud technology. That's basically a really long way of saying we couldn't make our own LLMs, so we're using someone else's. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that when Apple has ever had something to announce, good or bad, they let us know by posting a press release on their newsroom website. They were real quick to do it when announcing their new AI technology in 2024, but for some reason they haven't posted anything about this unprecedented $1 billion a year AI partnership with Google. Interesting. I guess they must be embarrassed that as one of the richest, most powerful tech companies on Earth, with a reputation for creating revolutionary technology, they've completely failed to achieve what OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, Anthropic, Tencent, IBM, and Oracle have all achieved. So why not? What specifically held Apple back from creating their own LLMs? Well, Apple. The story behind this particular failure is unlike anything I've seen in the company's history. It's like the perfect storm of every weakness Apple has, and it's going to take them confronting each of those weaknesses to recover. So let's take a look at them one by one, starting with Siri. Siri sucks, and has sucked for the past 11 years. There's a lot of lore behind why that is, which I'll explain in a separate video, but right now all you need to know is this.
I'm going to give you a recent example from a friend of mine. This is obviously using iOS 17. What time zone is Las Vegas in? And the answer was, I tried it and got the same answer. Sorry, I can't help with that, but you can ask me the time in a specific city.
Yes.
If you change that from what time zone is Las Vegas in to what time zone is Las Vegas, then it would.
Right.
It gets
yeah. So this is the NLP brittleness problem, which is you don't want to have to teach a system all of the ways that human beings might ask for something.
So that was Apple's former president of AI talking about Siri in 2024, not understanding what a user was asking unless they worded it in just the right way. Other voice assistants like Amazon Alexa haven't had this issue in over a decade. The reason why Siri still does is because Apple hasn't changed its foundational technology. It still uses the same rule-based architecture as 15 years ago. That means an engineer has to create a rule for everything Siri does. They'll program in something like the word umbrella relates to the word rain, which relates to the word weather. So when a user asks, "Do I need an umbrella?" respond with a forecast from the weather app. This process of defining a rigid logic path for Siri had to be done for every potential question a user asks. And if you ask something that hasn't been pre-programmed,
sorry, I don't understand.
But you know something that doesn't require any effort at all? This video's sponsor, Clean My Mac, the all-in-one junk management system that removes clutter from your Mac and your mind to make space for more important things, like making this YouTube video that I've been procrastinating on for quite a while. Since I download lots of clips and photos to edit my videos, I need to squeeze every gigabyte out of my computer. And Clean My Mac does that for me by removing system cache, project leftovers, broken downloads, and duplicate files. So I can move on from yesterday's junk to today's junk, which I know Clean My Mac will delete for me tomorrow. You can also use it to free up iCloud storage space with a feature called Cloud Cleanup. It identifies files that are already being stored on your Mac and large files you may not need. That way you can get as much value out of your existing iCloud storage without paying for more. This can all be done through an easily accessible menu bar dashboard that keeps track of malware threats, CPU load, how much longer your MacBook's battery will last, and even your internet speed. You can try out Clean My Mac free for 7 days and then save 20% by using my code AppleExplained. Just tap the link in the comment section. Alright, now all the way back to 2011, there has been evidence of software engineers at Apple trying to convince their bosses to start over and rebuild Siri from scratch, but their words, quote, fell on deaf ears. likely because Apple's president of software, Craig Federighi, saw Siri's rigidity as beneficial. Which brings me to Apple's next weakness, their need for complete control. When Siri was brought to iPhone in 2011, its co-founders wanted it to become, quote, the App Store for AI, allowing developers to contribute their own features. That way, like the App Store, Siri could quickly accumulate knowledge across a massive range of topics, instead of the 15 domains of knowledge it launched with. But it took Apple 5 years to open up Siri, and even then, they retained strict control over what developers could do with it. Amazon, on the other hand, opened up Alexa within a year, and gave developers nearly limitless freedom over its features. That's how Alexa grew from just 10 domains of knowledge in 2014 to over 1,000 in 2016, while Siri remained stuck at 15. Apple also likes to keep complete control over their users' data, ensuring it remains private. The only way to do that reliably is to keep the data encrypted on each user's device, so that even Apple can't see it. But running AI technology locally on low-power devices like iPhone creates serious limitations. That's why every modern LLM lives on the cloud. They're too big and require too much processing power to fit on a single phone or computer. They also get smarter by using the personal data that Apple has deprived themselves of. But it isn't just users' data they protect, it's their own internal data when creating new technologies. In the AI research world, almost everything is published and shared openly. When Google invented their transformer architecture, they didn't hide it. They publicized it in a landmark paper titled "Attention is All You Need." OpenAI saw this and used that architecture to create ChatGPT. It may seem counterintuitive to share your technology achievements publicly, but AI development relies on this open source research structure. It allows the technology to be tested at scale by a number of different companies before being deployed. And when problems are discovered, several different teams have the opportunity to solve them. So while companies like OpenAI and Google were practically shouting from the rooftops about their progress, Apple was building their LLMs in total secrecy. There were even AI teams inside Apple that didn't know what the other one was working on, leading to major slowdowns in development. This approach also cost Apple talent. The credibility of an AI researcher depends on how many high-quality papers they've published. Since Apple didn't allow that, high-level AI researchers refused to work for them, while AI researchers inside Apple were easily poached by other companies. In the last quarter of 2025 alone, Apple lost 12 members of their AI team. Which brings me to another weakness holding them back: stingy spending. Apple typically doesn't aggressively invest in a new product or service unless they know exactly what the end result will be. But AI development usually works the opposite way. One Apple executive said, quote, "In the world of AI, you really don't know what the product is until you've done the investment. That's not how Apple's wired. Apple sits down to build a product knowing what the end game is." This meant Apple felt comfortable creating AI features like photo memories or predictive text, but avoided large AI models, which required lots of money to develop and maintain without having a specific use case. Even when ChatGPT came out in 2022, Apple's president of software really didn't believe it was very useful. He implied this when talking about a new AI feature on iPhone.
One of the things we talked about with PDFs was this fact that you could literally take a picture of a form. Like, you know, your kid brings home like a thing, and you could just take a picture of it, and it will figure out where all the fields are that you need to fill out and what they're asking you, and then suggest to you what you should be filling out in that form, right? That's just, it's like magic paper, right? It's automatic, but that's, you aren't having to think about it. You're not in, you know, you're not chatting with the thing. It's doing the job for you.
You're not chatting with the thing, it's doing it for you. This is an approach to technology that Steve Jobs also had. He believed, quote, Apple's job was to curate and show customers what they should want. It's why iPhone didn't have a search bar on the home screen while Android did. Jobs didn't want users doing the legwork to search for information. And while this was an idealistic belief, it wasn't a practical one. In order for an iPhone to always show me what I want, it has to be able to read my mind. Until then, I need a way to tell it what I'm looking for. That's why if you look at iPhone's home screen today, it has a search bar. This also applies to chatbots. Apple may not believe users should have to ask an AI what they want, but from a practical perspective, we need that option. And to be fair, Apple should already know this, since Siri was the original chatbot. Just because a different company is doing it better doesn't suddenly invalidate the concept. Now, despite their resistance to LLMs and chatbots, Apple did eventually change their tune. It happened when their president of software, Craig Federighi, used ChatGPT to write code. He was impressed and immediately recommended Apple make their own version of the technology. But again, their weaknesses slowed them down. Stingy spending meant they only had 100,000 AI chips to train their models, compared to Microsoft with 500,000 and Google with over 1 million. Apple also refused to match the pay packages offered by other companies, making it hard to build a strong team of AI researchers. And their prioritization of user privacy, while admirable, complicated the engineering process. All of this meant developing their own LLMs would likely take even longer than Google and OpenAI, two companies that already had a 6-year head start. But Apple was under pressure to act fast. Their stock price began to stagnate as shareholders lost confidence. Which brings me to Apple's final weakness, pleasing shareholders. I should mention, this hasn't always been the case. Steve Jobs was known for being pretty apathetic toward investors. Even when the company was struggling financially in 1997, he said, quote, "What we need to do is keep our eye on the prize. That's turning out great products and communicating with our customers, then the stock price will take care of itself." Later on, when Apple did start to accumulate extra cash, Warren Buffett told Jobs they should buy back their own stock to boost the price. But he never did. When Tim Cook became CEO, however, that changed. He created the largest stock buyback program in corporate history. That way, Apple's stock price could keep going up even as iPhone sales slowed down. But once ChatGPT was released and it became clear Apple didn't have anything to compete, shareholders began to panic. From June 2023 to June 2024, Apple's stock rose just 6%, compared to Microsoft's 29%, Google's 42%, and Meta's 86%. Cook knew stock buybacks weren't enough. To get Apple out of this rut, they'd have to do what shareholders were demanding: announce their own modern AI to compete with ChatGPT. There was only one problem: it wasn't ready. Internally, Apple had a chatbot named Ajax that was about 25% less accurate than ChatGPT. And while they had plans for a new and improved Siri, it likely wouldn't be ready for launch until 2026 or even 2027. But Apple couldn't stand another 2 years of stagnation, so they introduced their AI technology to the world early. It was called Apple Intelligence, and while they showed off a number of AI features, no one really knew what Apple Intelligence was. Like, what was a specific technology we can point to and say, because that's what's powering this feature, it qualifies as Apple Intelligence? According to Apple, there's no concrete definition. For example, at the start of their presentation in 2024, they say Apple Intelligence is, quote,
AI for the rest of us,
implying that all AI features fall under that umbrella. But that can't be true, since Apple has been using AI features for years, and they don't consider previous AI features to be part of Apple Intelligence today. So then you might assume, okay, maybe it only applies to new AI features that use Apple's large language models. Except that's also not the case, since typing to Siri is considered an Apple Intelligence feature, and doesn't rely on any of Apple's new large language models. In fact, Type to Siri has existed as an accessibility feature since 2017 with iOS 11. So what is Apple Intelligence? It's such a vague concept that it confused even Apple's own executives. Listen closely to this clip with Apple's AI president John Giandrea and software president Craig Federighi.
Everything we've spoken about heretofore is not Apple Intelligence. Right. Machine learning in photos, the email categorization, all sorts of stuff that would broadly fall under your domain is not what you're calling Apple Intelligence.
Some of it is powered by Apple Intelligence.
Well, so things like, for instance, the
Smart script.
smart script, the math, and so forth. we are not, those aren't built on the foundation models
Right.
On device or in the cloud.
If you didn't catch it, the interviewer, John Gruber, clarifies, are the new AI features announced for iOS 18, like email categorization, considered Apple Intelligence? Giandrea says, quote, some of it is powered by Apple Intelligence. Then Craig Federighi chimes in and says, well, things like SmartScript and Math Notes are not built on the foundation models on device or in the cloud. Then Giandrea shifts uncomfortably in his seat. At this point, I wish Gruber would have asked a follow-up question, like, okay, then how do you decide what is an Apple Intelligence feature and what isn't? This sort of confusion is why in the world of marketing there's a saying that goes, sell the hole, not the drill. Meaning customers don't actually want your product or technology, they want the result it gives them. Steve Jobs explained this perfectly when talking about Apple's printer, the LaserWriter.
We built the world's first small laser printer, as you know, and there was awesome technology in that box. We had the first Canon laser printing, cheap laser printing engine in the world, in the United States here at Apple. We had a very wonderful printer controller that we designed. We had Adobe's PostScript software in there. We had Apple Talk in there. Just awesome technology in the box. And I remember seeing the first printout come out of it and just picking it up and looking at it and thinking, you know, we can sell this. Because you don't have to know anything about what's in that box. All we have to do is hold this up and go, do you want this? And if you can remember back to 1984, before laser printers, it was pretty startling to see that. People went, whoa, yes.
And that reaction Jobs had described is how people felt when Siri was introduced. ChatGPT had a similar wow factor. But when I ask someone about Apple Intelligence, AI for the rest of us, I usually get a blank stare, because it doesn't describe any result you'd get from using it. Whereas in 2012, when I asked someone about Siri, your intelligent assistant that helps you get things done just by asking, everyone knew exactly what I meant. And they usually asked if I had it because they wanted to try. The reason why Apple took a different marketing approach with Apple Intelligence is because they weren't marketing to customers. They were marketing to shareholders. They needed to make it clear that we're not just introducing new software features, we're creating a completely new AI technology. And while that doesn't mean much for iPhone users, it meant everything for shareholders, who got the reassurance they needed to keep buying the stock. The day after Apple Intelligence was revealed, their stock jumped over 7%. That was a higher gain in a single day than they'd achieved the past 12 months. By the end of that year, Apple's stock was up by almost 30%. Shareholders were happy, and Apple was happy. But what about customers? Because while Apple did release several beta AI features in fall 2024, many didn't work very well. Email Summaries was prioritizing scam emails that impersonated companies like Apple. Genmoji didn't look as good in real life as they did in the ads, and it burned through battery life. The Notification Summaries feature received criticism from multiple news outlets for completely misrepresenting article headlines. After being available for just 3 months, Apple disabled the Notification Summaries feature for news apps. But the most anticipated feature was the new and improved Siri, which Apple said would be released in early 2025. That never happened. Instead, they announced a delay, promising the feature, quote, in the coming year. That means the new Siri should arrive around this time, in early 2026. But we've yet to hear any official word from Apple. What we do know is Apple's having trouble building their own large language models, so they had to partner with Google to use theirs instead. Hopefully this means we'll be getting that improved Siri soon, but there are also negative implications. Since Apple and Google are competitors, relying on Google for their AI technology can be risky. I mean, we've seen this sort of thing play out before. The old Maps app on iPhone used Google's Maps data. That worked well until Google made a competing smartphone platform called Android. Suddenly, Google began withholding Maps features from iPhone, like higher quality vector-based graphics, voice-guided turn-by-turn navigation, transit directions, and offline maps. This upset Apple, who was forced to create their own Maps service from scratch. It launched prematurely and was a disaster for the company. with inaccuracies, missing landmarks, and distorted 3D renderings, prompting a public apology from Tim Cook and the guy in charge of the project, Scott Forstall, being fired. By relying on Google today for their foundational LLMs, Apple appears to be putting themselves in a similar situation. The big question is, can they eventually make their own AI technology good enough to transition away from Google? The answer to that is likely years away, as rumors suggest Apple's building their new AI features on Google Gemini, including an improved Siri this year and even a Siri chatbot in 2027. It's just a shame Apple didn't learn from their initial AI failure with Siri. They fell so far behind other voice assistants due to outdated technology, and now they've fallen even further behind for exactly the same reason. Now, I'll be making a video about the initial Siri failure in the coming weeks, so be sure you're subscribed for that. But for now, this is Greg with Apple Explained. Thanks for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next video.